Hello and welcome to the show. And I've had more emails about drones in the last few weeks than I have about any other, UFO encounter or any, UFO sightings or anything else I've ever had on that we've seen on the news, including what happened in Washington, D.C. with the hearings or anything like that. So everyone has been wanting me to tell them what the drones are. I really don't have an answer, but we're exploring some things tonight. And I'm going to be bringing in my good friend and guest, Marc D'Antonio, who has a really good background in drone technology and things like that. Later, just after I bring him in, we're going to be listening to Nick Pope, who I recorded with earlier today, and his thoughts on the whole drone situation. I also have a live witness, a firsthand witness. And she will be a clip played later on. And also Lue Elizondo gave me permission to play a clip of his take on this whole situation. So for right now, I'm going to bring in my good friend, Marc D'Antonio, just to let everyone know, though, I do have Ryan Graves coming up on Tuesday here in studio. And the following week, I also have someone in the aviation field, Todd Curtis. He's going to be on in the following week to talk about UAP, UFOs, etc. And here we are with Marc. Welcome, Marc.
Hey there, Martin. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being willing to join me today.
Sure. It's a hot topic right now, and I've been doing active investigations of them lately. So I thought, if it helps, I'll show people what I saw and tell people about what that I've been working on.
Right. And you were actually, did you just tell me it was last night? Was it 1 a.m. in the morning? You were out investigating?
Yeah, I was. I got back around 1:30 in the morning here because we were. I was with Ben Hansen and his team of researchers working on another case that you guys will see at some point. And the drone sightings were coming in left and right while we were doing this case out there in Western Connecticut. And the police officers that he was dealing with actually said, "Hey, we have a case going right now. We got a call. Want to come out and see it with us?" And we did. We went out, and we didn't actually see a drone. We saw lots of aircraft in the sky. Confirmed, of course, not by just visual, but by using ADS-B data. ADS-B is basically a telemetry coming from the aircraft telling you where it is, its altitude and speed. Mm-hmm. Okay, for people that don't know, every aircraft should be using ADS-B systems. All right,
I thought transponder.
It's a transmitter that transmits this information out to the world.
Yeah.
Post 9/11, not much of it was to be had, and it wasn't very available, but it became available more and more and more. And now, if you get an app for your iPhone or your Android called Flight Radar 24, and I encourage people to do that because a lot of people are submitting now videos of airplanes and saying they're drones.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible they're drones, but in all likelihood, they're aircraft when you look at the light configuration, the speed at which they're moving. Okay. So we have to be careful about that. But Flight Radar 24, you can get it and use it. And it's got an augmented reality called AR, which you hold it up and in the sky, you'll see the sky and you'll see the plane in the camera view and you'll see a label on it telling you what it is. And we did that for many, many different flying objects we saw yesterday. And the only thing that made them UFO, for instance, was not knowing which airline they were. Once we knew that, okay, that one's SAS Airlines, SAS. Okay, this one is United going to London Heathrow. And now once we knew all that, see, that gives us a kind of a command of the sky. The problem is the drones do not show up on Flight Radar 24. And many of these drones are flying under 1,000 feet. All right. So they're not going to be as high as aircraft, commercial aircraft, but they will be just about 1,000 feet or below, which is kind of, it's even lower than Cessna's fly, the little top wing planes, the Cessna 172, the Skylane, the 182. I mean, all these planes fly at a minimum of 1,500 feet typically, except when they land, of course. And so now we're talking about some strange goings on that need to be addressed. And yes, there are drones out there, without a doubt.
And they're
But
all over. People are reporting them in Germany, Australia, you name it, everywhere. I'm going to remind you of this clip because I sent this to you, about over 4 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? Anyway, here it is. And that was something where I was baffled because it was really high winds. I never saw where it landed. So
okay.
I'm going to show you this clip here now. What the? All right. Am I actually filming the UFO? What the heck? That's a light reflection, lens reflection or whatever. But that's not. Jeez. This is unbelievable. Those little things moving around, that's just the street lights and the lens. But this red thing, which turns white, is not. Anyway, you remember that? I sent that, and you said, well, if it looks like a drone, acts like a drone, it's probably a drone. And I did chase to see where I thought that thing landed, and I didn't see anyone, but anyway.
Well, that's because it probably didn't crash. When the guy brought it down, he turned it off and walked away with the drone, and by the time you got there, he was long gone. And he might not have been trying to hide. But that looked like one of the typical phantom drones from DJI. I've got two of them back here. One's got an infrared camera on it that I put on, and one's got a regular 4K camera. It's not, and the reason I say that is because it's the right size so that it has what's called the right moment of inertia to take off as fast as it did. I have a big hexacopter drone, and when it starts to go, it doesn't just go like these things do. It went like this. It goes, and it ramps up the speed. This didn't have to ramp up. It just took right off. And I noticed that it had red lights and green lights. And when it turned around at the left end of its path, it turns, and then you see the green lights on the back. Right. Okay. And then it goes the other way, and you're back to seeing the red lights on the front. Okay. So it was kind of going away from you and then kind of away from you and then kind of towards you. So when it was turning, you saw the green lights on the back, and then it went the other way. You saw the red lights again. And the green lights weren't as intense because you only had one of them on the back. And when it turns fully away from you, you got both of them. And that's when you saw that green flash as it turned. So
it's a drone. But it was these things are pretty fantastic to watch.
Yeah, but he was flying it at night, which is interesting because unless he outfitted it with an infrared system, he wasn't seeing much. So that always makes it a little odd to me. So, but you know what? Yeah. People are motivated by the strangest things. I want to put my drone up in the air, and that's all. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go with Nick Pope. I recorded with this earlier today. Here we go. For joining me on this very strange topic on what's going on. Isn't it something?
It really is. It's a real old-fashioned, I guess you'd call it a flap, a UFO flap.
Yeah, worldwide. I mean, this is a strange thing. I thought it was concentrated. Well, I heard a lot of it happened in the UK, some time ago. I wasn't even familiar with that, but it's all over, even Germany. I'm hearing even Australia.
Yes. I mean, I think clearly some of this is, I don't want to say copycatism, but I think it's obviously, we all know that UFO sightings, if we use the phrase UFO for now, are chronically underreported. So I think when you get mainstream media coverage, whether it's of these objects, drones, again, we can get into the language, over UK military bases, or whether it's over New Jersey or wherever it is, it smokes out perhaps reports that otherwise would have gone unmentioned and unnoticed. It encourages people to come forward and say, hey, I saw something too.
That's exactly right. I didn't even think of that angle. I know some of it's misidentification, and sure, that's going to happen where now so many people are looking for them that they may misidentify. I know that's happened a few times, but I'm sure that's part of it, but it's definitely not the bulk of it. I mean, the bulk of it is, especially you mentioned New Jersey. So many, and there's some. I guess you would call them incursions if they're in, restricted airspace, but there's so many that are happening there. It's just ongoing.
Yes, some of them are over military bases. And so, yeah, absolutely, unless it's your own kit, which is one of the theories, secret black projects and all that. But it's generally restricted airspace. Then some is over, I guess you would say, critical national infrastructure, and some other places, and just the fact that obviously New Jersey is pretty densely populated. It's over the heads of Joe Public, and so there is huge mainstream media and resultant public interest in all this, and everyone at the moment just focusing on New Jersey and maybe other areas of the US Northeast, but everyone is talking about this, and we've got the FBI involved, local law enforcement, Homeland Security, the Pentagon, various local mayors, police chiefs, the White House gave a briefing. So an awful lot of people have their finger in the pie, and that sometimes that can help, but sometimes that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know that Donna, who you met, she has a place on the Cape, and she's been watching that, and there's all kinds of sightings even there. I mean, this could be in that particular situation where someone is purposely putting up, their own private drone or whatever, just trying to stir it a little more. But some of these are staying up for much too long of a time to be like a regular drone that you can buy on the market. They're staying up for, sometimes people are reporting up to 6 or 7 hours. And that has to be more either like government or some type of commercial drone, I would imagine.
Yes, and that has obviously focused attention on one of the leading theories, which is that some of this, and I say some because I'm a firm believer with this, that there isn't one single answer, that lots of things are going on in parallel. I mean, just to give one example of lots of things, literally yesterday I saw one news media organization sending up drones with cameras on to try and photograph and film other drones that they thought might be up there. So it's like fueling the fire, so to speak. But going back to adversary drones, yes, many of the local law enforcement people who are familiar with hobbyist drones, they say, as you mentioned, that these seem to stay up for longer. They seem larger than most of the commercially available drones, and some of the characteristics in terms of frequencies and things. Again, they're saying it's very odd. And so, yeah, that brings one's attention to the possibility that it's not what you and I would call drones, but unmanned aircraft systems, unmanned aerial vehicles. So UAS, UAV, possibly operated. I mean, one theory is it's left hand, right hand, it's US military test. But I think the more disturbing possibility is that some of this is adversary drones. Iran was mentioned, but I think China is the more likely suspect.
I've been saying that myself, to people I've been talking to. I think it's a possibility because China did have their drones out overseas following a military test a number of years ago, and it was drones. I mean, it was put out there as UFOs, but it was actually considered to be Chinese drones by frequency. I'm not really sure if that's what it was or how they knew it was Chinese drones. But there is a gentleman named Evan Cutler. I've been trying to reach him. He's a journalist in New Jersey, and he claims that he saw a drone. He jumped out of his car, pulled over, and he said he thought it appeared to be about 40 by 40 feet and was only about 100 to 150 feet above him. And he jumped out of his car and was watching it. And then he realized he should get video of it, went back to his car, and by the time he got out of his car again with his phone and ready to go, the thing was pretty far away. He's got a picture of it. But I mean, 40 by 40, it's awful hard to judge how big something is and how far up over your head it is. But, that's what his thoughts were.
Yeah, I think actually he was one of the other guests on a recent one of the recent TV news interviews I did on News Nation, and I think
okay. Yeah.
he has a background, I believe, in videography, and no witness is infallible, but he's pretty much as good as they get. And I heard one of the interviews. Like I say, I think he was the other guest when Ashley Banfield was interviewing me last time. But be that as it may, I mean, I think, there is some intelligence suggesting that the Chinese have made quantum leap developments in possibly AI-controlled drone swarms, for example, and also have, and this would tie in with Evan's description, also have bigger drones or UAV, UAS systems that would be capable of staying airborne for longer. And of course, these are predominantly intelligence gathering platforms. We all remember the Chinese spy balloon saga. And that, of course, that balloon was carrying an incredibly sophisticated SIGINT array under it, which the US military, of course, subsequently recovered. But again, it just shows that whatever we think is going on, there are clear national security implications here, and that's why people need answers.
I was just putting up these pictures. I don't believe the last time we talked that I told you this, but I was right under the Chinese balloon when they shot it. And I just happened to be there talking to a real estate agent, and when I got out of the car, he said, "Look, up there's a Chinese balloon." And I said, "Yeah, it looks just like it." He said, "No, it isn't." And then I watched the sequence of the jet flying to it and actually shooting it. That was pretty wild. But that kind of went away pretty fast. That whole 3 shoot downs right away. And, the whole thing kind of went away. But so that is one of the possibilities. Whatever is happening, it seems like it has to have a large amount of funds behind it, like a concerted effort to do something. I mean, these are my theories, but I mean, it just seems like this is not a hobbyist or a group of hobbyists.
No. And if this is a foreign adversary, then those drones could be coming off a submarine or off a military naval vessel of some sort, or perhaps more likely a commercial vessel, perhaps under a false flag or one of those, one of those countries where it's like a flag of convenience, effectively. And again, one hopes that behind the scenes, because frankly, the response to all this has looked a little bit disjointed and inept, but one hopes that behind the scenes, the government does know a little bit more than they're letting on. And one hopes that, there is information, including imagery, that somebody in the intelligence community has that goes a little bit further than the public statements, which frankly, a little more at the moment than we don't know, but we don't think the public is in danger, which of course isn't really satisfying anyone.
No, everyone's upset about that statement because it seems like, I mean, it seems like unless it's of, national security, that we should just know more about this situation, if they do indeed know more. And when I say that, I'm talking about our government, because obviously this is happening everywhere over Germany. And I just was, someone from Australia just reached out to me this morning and said over Brisbane, over Pine Gap, there's all kinds of things going on. That would be considered an incursion in that space there. So, it just seems well organized, or maybe it's groups, like cashing in on this situation and doing something, in different areas, just because of all the hype this is getting. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the point about there not being one answer to this. Lots of things happening in parallel. Going back to the British situation, I think it's no coincidence that these drone incursions, for want of a better phrase, started literally 2 or 3 days after the UK government had authorized the use of long-range munitions like Storm Shadow against not just occupied parts of Ukraine, but against Russian territory. And that was many people believe we're pretty much in a proxy war with Russia anyway. And a lot of people said that crossed a line. Putin certainly said it crossed a line. And the fact that those incursions started almost immediately after that British government decision, like I say, I don't think that's a coincidence. In the US, obviously, I think China is a more realistic possibility than Russia, but I don't think we should rule it out. But some of these reports are just people kind of misidentifying. Literally, I've seen people get overexcited and post videos on social media clearly showing commercial aircraft and helicopters. And so you throw that into the mix, and I go back to the point. We're not going to have this parting of the curtain moment where here you are, here's the answer.
Maybe you're right. No, one of the things, people have said to me, and I've heard a lot of other people say it, is why don't they just shoot one down and so they can see what it is? And there was also a hobbyist that said that he saw a drone, flew his own drone up toward it, and his battery instantly died, which is pretty bizarre. I don't know if there was a relation to, close proximity to that drone that made that happen, or something else.
Yeah, it's, we're familiar, of course, many cases involving close encounters, going to the UAP issue specifically, of vehicle interference, and speculation is that there's some sort of electromagnetic field from the energy source, the propulsion system, whatever it might be, that can impact car engines, for example, and radio transmissions and such like. Speaking to your point about the shooting, yeah, this is even President-elect Trump talked about this yesterday, and he said, and I've said this, and a number of other commentators have, that the military and maybe law enforcement, if it's safe to do so, for example, over open water, if it's safe to do so, yeah, they should try to bring one or more of these down. What we shouldn't have is a situation where the public try this, because then I think we end up with a very dangerous situation. It's a well-known fact that people firing guns up into the air, the old saying, what goes up must come down, and people do sadly get killed and seriously injured by bullets that are fired into the air but then come back down again and hit somebody, usually on the head. So it can happen, and that's why people shouldn't take matters into their own hands. But tensions are running high, so that's why, again, the government should, I think, have a more frank conversation with the American people than they're currently having, and should be a little bit more robust in their actions.
Right. And another thing that I've been hearing, you may have been hearing this too, is people are wondering why they don't follow them to see where they actually, end up landing. And I don't know what the situation is with that. I mean, do they just not show up in radar? Because they're too low. I guess that would probably be it.
There are a number of. My hopeful answer to your question is that they are doing exactly that, but that if some of this is classified, they're just not telling us. But absolutely, one would hope and expect that they're doing that. However, even though we talk about these things being larger than an average drone, they're still pretty small. And if you are flying fast and maneuverable, and if you can then switch your lights off, it is very difficult to track something like that, particularly obviously at night.
There's not a lot of these that are daytime. Most of them seem to be at night, and that seems to be by design, wouldn't you think?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I mean, some of them are. But anyway, I thank you so much for your time. This has been a real pleasure to get your take on it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good to talk about it. It's certainly a subject that's on everyone's lips right now.
All right. Why is that? Here we are. I don't know what happened. But anyway, yeah, so I thought that was he had an interesting take on the whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't think these drones are bird poop.
Yeah, I saw that comment.
I think
Someone's teasing you.
Oh,
They're
I don't
saying,
care.
you know, that here's the thing, and this is I'm gonna stand in your corner a little bit here. A lot of people get upset at you. You're a photo analyst, you're a video analyst, but I think it's wonderful that you do what you do, because there's certainly enough weird stuff out there to separate the things that people think are something, and you say, oh, well, I can see this, I can see that. That's most likely, the Occam's razor, that's most likely the answer. So I appreciate the work that you do. And,
Thanks.
you saved me from posting a picture, because I had this picture. I was taking a picture of cactus when I was out in Phoenix. And all of a sudden I saw the picture and I saw a perfectly shaped disc at an angle. And I showed you and you said, well, it looks like there could be something on the glass. And I went out. Sure enough, there was a little piece of grass that was stuck to the side of my side window. That looked like a UFO in the picture.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those. And again, I'm not a debunker, okay, because I've had very strange experiences happen to me that make me, and I'm an astronomer, I'm a professional astronomer. I got my degree in that. So I spent a lot of time invested in the dogma of standard science. But for the last several decades, I've been fighting the arrogance in science. Okay.
Mhm.
And I've sort of taken up a dual pronged attack, both on my science and on the things that people are saying are, say, UFOs, because some of them are wrong in my estimation, and I show them reasons why. But I never say, I never just come right out and say to them, you're so wrong. I say, well, here's what else it can be.
Yeah.
And that's the approach I take. I don't say,
Yeah, that's a nice approach.
it is, because I don't take away the possibility that they're right. You never should do that, right?
Mhm.
But if I think that they're wrong, I tell them why I think they can't make that assumption that it's a UFO when there's other possibilities. That's all.
Yeah.
And by the way, just for the record, we think of drones as battery powered, short range things that have to be start and stop here, like in the United States. Not so. There's actually a drone that was just brought out, oh gosh, this past September, has a 5,800-mile range, and it
What?
uses liquid hydrogen as a fuel. Yeah. And
Huh.
it's from Ho Green Air in South Korea. And it's a long range hydrogen fuel cell drone. And there was a report from the Coast Guard off the New Jersey coast that said they counted 50 drones flying onshore from out in the ocean. They could have started from, North Africa.
Are you saying this is the Coast Guard situation, the 47-foot Coast Guard one that was trailed, or is this something else?
This might be related to that one, but this, I don't know. I don't know if it's the same report with other conclusions or other additions, but I'm telling you that off New Jersey's coast, they saw 50 coming in from its sea. This started the rumor that there's a ship out there.
Right.
But with drones like this 5,800-mile one, you don't need that.
Now, how expensive are those particular drones?
I don't know.
They must be hugely expensive.
Well, they have a 14-hour flight time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they have 14 hours of fuel. They can go 5,800 miles, high speed, light enough so that they can go zipping across the ocean. The only thing is they're not the size of a car, like has been reported. They're
Mhm.
smaller, and they're quadcopters.
Yeah.
Now, that's a very interesting finding. But we do see drones that have no requirement to be refueled or have batteries put in them again. At Astra, I don't know the exact speed, but I'm going to guess somewhere around 45 to 65 miles an hour. Typical, actually. I have a drone that can go about 45 top speed, not really much faster. But I will say this. One of the findings was that they tried drone downing technology on it, which is a frequency interrupter technology, and it didn't even touch it, these drones. And I think I know why. First of all, there is going to be a switch at the operator. He can push a button that's equivalent to like the return to home or some such thing. And that'll transmit. And that's the one and only transmission the drone needs, because everything else is powered by AI. So the drone will just go on its waypoint mission, do its thing, gather footage, and then fly offshore, transmit it, and maybe dunk in the sea when it's done, because you can't make it back. But in 14 hours, a jet crosses the Atlantic in 4.5 hours, 5 hours. So that's half the flight time. So let's say it crosses the Atlantic, and that's at 500 miles an hour. Well, these drones don't go that fast. So is it realistic to be coming from North Africa? Not really, unless it's a one-way mission.
Well, what do you think about? I think that was very interesting what Nick was saying about what if there's some type of commercial, vessel involved out there that's getting involved in this, and could be right in the mid Atlantic or somewhere, or even a few hours out. Yeah,
just past our international waters.
That's right. What is that? How many miles out is that? Like, is it only like 200?
Yeah,
yeah.
And that would be out there, and nothing for a 14-hour duration drone.
That's right. Yeah.
And as far as the speed they go, I can find that out because they can carry 10 kilograms of weight, and I'm trying to. Okay, all right. Okay, here's what happened. They're remotely operated too. If they want to remotely operate them, they can from across the world. And they successfully flew one in the U.S. 5,600 miles from the drone's home base in South Korea, and that's where they were, the operators. And they ran it over the U.S. from there. Okay, so it actually works. So there is a possibility. And the same drones, the same drone or other drones like it have 30 minutes max before they have to change their lithium polymer batteries, LiPo batteries. So the hydrogen drone is kind of like a new thing, and it offers a lot more. There's no speed thing here, but I'm guessing that's probably maybe up to 60 miles an hour. And if you have hydrogen fuel and you have 14-hour flight time, then you have quite a long time in the air with it, right?
Yeah. Here's someone that's watching us live here that said they saw a large drone in New Jersey, 3 white lights, no red or green, lights formed in a triangle, minimal noise, low hum, moving at a zigzag pattern, very deliberate, like it was looking for something.
Interesting.
And that makes me want to play the next thing, the clip. But go ahead, and I'm going to play the clip after that because
sure. I won't let you lose that moment here. I've seen when I was out with the police last night. One of the police officers showed me a video he shot that night, just 20 minutes before we got to the police station, right over the police station in Western Connecticut. He shot this drone, and I looked at this drone, and look, I'm very good at understanding FAA lighting. I'm good at understanding airplanes. I've taken every bad picture a camera can take. Okay. I know what time exposures look like. I'm an astronomer. We do that. Okay. I'm very familiar with these things. I looked at this object that was sort of moving slowly through the sky, and it was rectangular shape, had 4 lights on it. Okay. Like 2 here and 2 here. It had, at the back end, it had some collection of lights and nothing in the middle. It was just 4 lights, rectangular shape, and then something in the middle, just to not in the middle, but to the rear side. And it was kind of going slowly, not at an expected aircraft speed like a Cessna or whatever seen from an odd angle. Okay. This was truly very different. And I didn't recognize it as anything that I've seen. So I have seen drones like this, however, and that's the thing. Maybe this was one of those drones repurposed. Now, the size is different. I've seen drones like that are smaller drones, maybe 3 foot by 4 foot. I haven't seen drones that are 30 foot by 40 feet or like something like that. It's very different. So
they seem very costly and a lot of, you'd have to have a lot of fuel or energy source for something that big to carry that type of weight unless it was a very lightweight material, but then it would be, kind of tricky as far as wind and things like that.
Yeah. And unless it was a liquid hydrogen fueled engine.
Yeah.
Then It has that 14 hours flight time, 1,500 mile range. I mean, that's real. That is not fake.
Yeah.
And it can be controlled by AI so that it kind of figures out where it wants to go and generates its own waypoints, kind of thing, knows how to avoid obstacles, stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's a clip. I have permission from Lue Elizondo today to play this clip here. And the whole video is down below in the a link in the show notes and below in the text. But here's a clip that I thought was interesting from what he said yesterday.
Probably there's a potential that these are not foreign adversarial drones. If they are drones and they are big and they're large and they're sophisticated, then they're probably our drones. Now, when I say our drones, someone in the U.S. government, DoD's already come out and said, no, they're not ours. That may be true. There's other agencies out there, right? There's DHS and there's other organizations out there like Department of Energy, believe it or not, who are responsible for protecting some of our nuclear facilities, and they have drones. So one scenario could be, and again, let me just emphasize here, I don't want anybody to freak out, but one scenario here could be that these are our drones being lent by one of our organizations, maybe an intelligence organization, to another domestic organization that's very concerned about our security. Perhaps there is a scenario where there's an adversarial nation, maybe we got a report or suspicion that some adversarial nation has a weapons of mass destruction somewhere here in the continental United States, and so we are deploying these vehicles in attempt to sniff them out, if you will, try to locate these things if it's true. Again, I have no information to indicate that there is indeed some sort of broken arrow situation or where we have some sort of weapons of mass destruction here in the continental United States, but it would explain a lot of the responses we're seeing, right? Where local law enforcement isn't being informed of what's going on, state law enforcement and officials aren't being informed, and yet someone in a federal agency is spending money and time and resources to do this. Now, what scenario would predicate such an act? Well, if there was something so scary, so dangerous, that maybe they don't want to scare the people. Maybe they want to try to do this in a way that doesn't cause mass panic, right, or something to that degree. Again, let me just emphasize, I don't know this to be true. It's just a hypothesis, if you will, of if this was our drones, why would we be keeping it secret from local and state law enforcement and other officials and even Congress? Maybe because we have some sort of threat information and we're trying to find something. Another option is possibly that these things aren't always drones. They could be confused. You could have, in some cases, because some people reported these large triangles, in some cases these drones are flying silently with no sound. And yes, you see a strobing action to some of these, and some of those could be navigational lights of drones and aircraft. But there's other possibilities as well. And so let's talk about those possibilities, for example. It's possible that you could have, for example, a UAP being seen over a sensitive U.S. facility or installation. And so what do? We launch our drones, because typically in the past we used to fly helicopters, but helicopters are expensive. And let's face it, you might have one or two, if you're lucky, if it's available to you. And there's time it takes to get a pilot, wake them out of bed, have them go to the helicopter, start it up and fly it. By then, whatever it is you're chasing is long gone. So it makes sense that you have these quick response, quick reaction drones on or near military installations, that if there was an event, you could launch these immediately. In fact, almost autonomously, and they would all go to a pre-arranged location and start surveying the area to see if they can find what's in and around the area. So is it possible that some people are seeing UAP initially, and then the government's response is to launch these drones to try and find these things in a relatively quick and efficient manner? And so what people are seeing in some cases, some are seeing the initial UAP, whereas others are now seeing the follow-on response, the U.S. response, and trying to identify these things. Is that a possibility? I think so. That certainly could be a possibility. Drones now and drone technology is becoming far more pervasive. It's very efficient. By the push of a button, in fact, you can have these things automatically respond. If you have something on radar that you don't know what it is and it's in your airspace, you could have it where these things are tipped off automatically, and they just go out and deploy to the area that they've been programmed to conduct reconnaissance and do just that. So that's another possibility. And I just want to make sure that as we have this conversation and we move forward, that it's not necessarily just a either or situation. It might not be. It might be a combination of everything, or it might be neither of those, right? But I think we need to look at this. If you look at why certain elements of the government are being so secretive, look, we have counter-drone capabilities. We have that. So if there's a drone over a sensitive military installation, we already have the capabilities electronically and even physically, kinetically, to neutralize those instantly. And we're doing it in the combat field a lot.
What did you think of that?
I thought that was interesting. Lue's take on it is pretty interesting. My feeling has always been since the beginning that these are probably ours. I will say this, though. I did talk to someone at a defense company today for whom I do outsourced work for them. And he said that they're hearing that it's a private entity that's actually running these drones.
Really?
Yeah, a private entity. And that's as much as he told me.
Be very well funded. It would have to be.
Well, private entities many times will get government grants. And so
that would be ironic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So something like that is possible. But here's the thing: we have the fog of war, so to speak, right now. We don't know who's responsible. We're calling aircraft drones too. We're not actually just isolating just the drones. We're taking anything with flashing lights and saying it's a drone now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like post 9/11, everything was a threat. And everything was shut down and all that. Now, I had one commenter tell me yesterday that I was talking to, actually, it's not on the show. He said, why don't they just ground all aircraft again?
Yes, that was also Donna's. As you remember, we were on the phone yesterday, and Donna mentioned the same thing, kind of like 9/11, ground them all, like right after that happened. I was a flight attendant at the time, and, we were all grounded.
Yeah. Now, doesn't it make sense? Initially you think, well, it makes sense to ground everything, but the cost to the United States to ground everything is really quite high.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of different takes on this, and a lot of different possibilities, like all these photos you're showing right now. These are all, some are really close-up photos. You don't have the context of the picture, and they're photos. They're not imagery of a video, so you can't see how fast they're moving, whether those lights are flashing, things like that.
I just thought I'd put that one up.
That's actually funny because that's what it is. It's the car insurance people.
Yeah. But this whole thing is such a mystery. Now, with the amount of email that I've been getting from everyone, I was out to dinner with my son last night, and he looks over at me. Someone just texted me that was asking me to ask you if you knew what was going on with the drones, because they obviously know I do a show on this type of thing. So, but I mean, it really is such a hot topic. Earlier today, just in a little while here, I'm going to play a clip from a witness that was on the news, but I was trying to find non-witness, just raw footage of drones. And I spent 2 hours on YouTube looking, and all I could find was media videos,
Oh, I
from
got
the
some
news
privates. I got private stuff. Okay.
of images. Are you able to share them on your? Can you share these with the screen share?
I don't know if he wants me to do it. I mean, I don't think
I
he'd
see.
mind. I mean, I can name him. I don't think it's a problem because he's put him up on his Facebook page, Anthony Exemplari. Okay, Anthony, friend of mine, he said, check this out, and and he put it up on Facebook on his Facebook page. It was a object that did not look like a regular aircraft that he captured, and it was actually quite a good video. So I thought that was pretty neat, And of course, you hear him say, "What is that?" Oh my, everybody has to narrate their videos rather than just be silent. However, there's one thing that's very important. You actually hear propeller sounds. You hear brrr, as the thing is going over.
Yep.
And so to me, that was telling me that that's the sound that you want to hear that kind of ties it together. Because that tells me it's probably a quadcopter of some form, or a hexacopter like I've got, or an octocopter, which are the heavier lift ones. They have a propeller on the top and the bottom, and then 8 of those.
Wow.
Really, yeah, they can do heavy lift. There are some out there that have seats on them and people fly on them.
I
Okay,
saw a
yeah.
video of one. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to ride one of those, and there's
I
only
don't think
one
so.
reason why. Because you crash, and the last thing you see is those carbon fiber blades slicing through your brain.
Ooh,
Yeah,
you
I don't
want
think I'd
that.
want that. It's like, over in a split second. Not for me, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think about your thoughts? You just mentioned probably that it could be a possibility. I mean, that it's a private enterprise. Does that mean so it would be outside of government?
Not if they got government monies, but it could be a test of a government vehicle, a surveillance vehicle, and I'm going to say this too. The reason I think they're flying over populated areas is really specifically so they won't get shot down.
Well, the witness that I had on, she's in a very rural area. We might as well play that right now. I'm going to play that clip right now.
Okay.
Here we go. Welcome, Trisha.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you are my first witness that I'm talking to that actually saw, something. There's all kinds of clips online. Yes, I know. And luckily you agreed to come on. Now, well, first of all, your name is Trisha. Is it Bushley? Is that how you say it?
Yes, Bushley.
And where are you located in the state of New Jersey?
I am in Hunterdon County, in Lebanon.
Is that rural? Or is it?
Yes, it's very rural.
So I think it's a little unusual. These are all over the state. I mean, they're actually everywhere. People are reporting them all over the world, which is really such a mystery. But if you can, well, first of all, before you saw your first drone, I know there's been multiple sightings.
Yes.
But when did you first hear about the drones?
I first started hearing it, maybe, I guess it's like a week and a half ago now.
I see. And when did you see the first drone?
Well, now that, they're here and I think about it, it was in the beginning of November was my first sighting of something weird.
Oh, I see. So you started seeing them back then, but you didn't understand that it's actually a thing going on.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So if you would, can you describe the ones you saw early on? Were they similar to the ones you see more recently?
Yeah, so the first experience that I had was 4 bright white lights in the sky. They were, midair. They weren't too high or too low. And they were coming towards me. I was driving down the road and they were coming towards the area I was in. And at first glance, I thought they were helicopters. You know how sometimes helicopters will fly together. But it was enough to make me look at it and say, oh, okay, there's some helicopters. But they started changing patterns, like picture 2 on top, 2 on bottom. The one from the bottom would come up and look like it would touch one of the ones on top, and then come back down. And then the one from the top would come down to the bottom and touch another one. And at first I thought like maybe refueling in midair. I don't know how
Hmm.
common that is, but I was like, wow, that's weird. What are they doing? And it was only like a minute that I had them in view. And after I saw them moving around a bit, two went to the left and two went to the right, and that was it. So I thought, like I said, they were helicopters and just wrote it off. But now when you think about it, the patterns they were making, were they helicopters or was it something else? I don't know.
Now, did you hear anything?
No, at that point, no. I had windows up, radio on, so I didn't hear
Yep.
anything.
Now, what about other sightings that you've had? Did you hear any noise during those
Oh,
sightings?
yeah. So the first technical drone or whatever this was flying in front of my house from behind me. I was out hanging up some Christmas lights and I heard this really loud sound. It did not quite sound like a helicopter or a plane. So I don't want to say, oh, I never heard it before, but it was just, it didn't sound like a helicopter or plane, but it was very loud. So I turned around and took a look at it and I was like, whoa, that must be one of the drones they're talking about. This thing was illuminated so bright with so many colored lights. And to me, that kind of looked like a square shaped type thing.
Mm.
And I can't say it went over super fast, but by the time I grabbed my phone and was going to try and take a picture, it was gone. So I was like, oh my gosh, I guess that's what it is. So I ran in and told my husband, like, oh, I think a drone just flew over our house. But that was right when it really started becoming a frequent experience. That was the start of like the daily visits.
Now, daily visits? Wow.
Oh, they're here every night. I
Okay.
do have some footage. A lot of people out there are debunking it. Like, unless you're seeing it really in person, people are like, oh, that's a plane or, oh, it's a planet. Like today I posted something and somebody was like, that's Venus. And I'm like, okay, since when does Venus float across the sky? And so I had a screenshot of it up there. And then he was like, oh, it's a star. And I'm like, but you just said it was Venus. And then when he saw the video, he was like, oh, well, it's a plane. So I was like, okay, it's Venus, a star, and now it's a plane. I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't understand what people aren't seeing. But I will tell you, when you're looking at these things in person, they do not show up on video like you're seeing in real life.
Right. I understand that because I've done I'm not saying that I've filmed anything in particular, but I really do understand that because a lot of times I'll film something that I see and then I look at it, it's like, geez, it doesn't look like anything like it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a lot of times you're looking at it and you know that it's like floating a little left or floating a little right and up and down like planes don't do. And when you look at it, you could barely tell on the video.
Right. Right. Well, this is excellent. I thank you very much. I can't believe you're seeing these things every night. Oh, one last question.
Sure.
Would you guess would be the longest time that you saw one in the air?
In all honesty, almost every single time I have seen them has been like a spur of the moment, like, oh my gosh, there one is. I don't go out there purposely looking for these things. They just
Mhm.
happen to be there. Like even this morning, I was out walking my puppy early in the morning. I mean, I had my phone in my pocket just in case you see something, but I wasn't planning on going out there to see anything until I saw these three white lights. So I'm staring at them. Are they planes? What is it? But they'll just hover there for a little bit. And I promise you, it seems like as soon as you take out a phone to start recording it, all of a sudden they start going away.
Well,
So
you're not the first one to say that.
it's so
There's other
weird.
people are saying that. There was
Yeah.
a guy named Evan Cutler that mentioned the same thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like, is it just a coincidence or can they really tell that electronic devices are out and recording them? I mean, it's not like it's sitting 2 feet from me where it can see me, or maybe it can. I have no idea.
and I know I said that was the last question, but I have one
It's
more.
okay. I have
Um,
time.
Are you near any military bases or anything like that?
As far as I know, there's nothing like directly here, but we do have the Round Valley Reservoir,
Hmm.
and that's where they seem to really hang out the most here. I do know that it is the largest reservoir in New Jersey, and I think it said the second deepest lake.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. I really appreciate you coming on the show at such
Yeah.
short notice.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
You bet.
All right, have a great day.
You too. Thank you. I wanted to see the puppy. I forgot to ask her.
Well, there's a lot of things that people record, and they don't know what it is. She recorded some things, she didn't know what it was. And one of the confusing points is that when you look at something flying through the air, if you see a bunch of lights on it and you see some flashing lights and you see a red light and a green light, in all likelihood, that's a regular aircraft. And you can't ignore those lights because those are mandated by the FAA, right? The Federal Aviation Administration. And there's certain patterns, certain time frames for the flash that are actually dictated for each of those wing strobes and stuff. So when you see those, you can take out your flight aware on your phone, hold your phone up, and see if it shows up on flight aware. If it doesn't, well, then there's a couple of possibilities. Number one, it could be a military flight where they don't have ADS-B transmission active, and that's very possible. I've noticed that. Or it's something that doesn't use ADS-B, because not every single aircraft has ADS-B. They're all supposed to have ADS-B at some point, but we're kind of transitioning. Some have it and some don't. So you'll see sometimes ADS-B data on the newer planes, but not on some of the older planes. And so it sort of confuses the waters, a little bit. But
some of the things that I just showed a couple of the videos, and but one of them is just a like an orb type thing. I probably should have shown that it was a daylight thing. It was just white, kind of a fuzzy, not a real clear picture of it. But I mean, but she's seeing all kinds of things, and I think it's interesting that she was starting to see unusual things for what she normally sees long before she knew that there was any, drone situation.
Yeah, and what's interesting is once you start seeing things, you look up a lot more at them, and so you pay attention to the sky a lot more.
Yeah.
And to me, that's normal because since age 9, I've never not looked at the sky. Always wanted a car with a sunroof so I could look at the sky while I'm driving. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. No.
I did go off in the woods from that one time, actually.
I believe it. So now in your, the technology and stuff that you've looked into, now I've heard this, I think you mentioned this maybe a few years ago when you were on one of my shows, that they've had drone technology that can go in and out of the water.
Yeah, I have one. I have one right now in an aluminum case behind me here in my drone repertoire. That's a marine drone that can actually go down, sit in the water, view underneath the water, and then come fly back out of the water. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not the best one for the automation stuff, like waypoint flying. It's kind of one of the early ones. So it does feature a very prominent runaway condition, whereas it'll come out of the water at some points and then just go taking off on its own, and you got to kind of flick the switches a few times to get it to come back. So it's not me doing that. It's actually the drone's AI settings are not 100% fleshed out properly. So it was one of the earlier ones. But the bottom line is that there are many drones that will actually do this and sit in the water, fly out of the water. You can actually propel it under the water with the propellers and then come to the surface and reverse everything and actually end up flying off the water. That's the hardest part, is getting out of the water, which wants to cling to you. Once you're airborne and all the spray stops, you're airborne. Now you're clean again, and it looks great. And I used that drone when I was using it to video sailing vessels for people. Because if it fell in the water, it was okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So also in this channel, I just put up a conversation between like a radio tower and an airplane in Oregon. It's very interesting because they're talking about hypersonic speeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that really, I don't think has anything to do with drones. That has to be something totally different, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you actually listen to the whole thing all the way through?
I did. That was ATC contacting an aircraft flying, and they said, do you have any idea what that thing is we're seeing out there?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't know what that was. Not necessarily a drone, but it was something they couldn't identify. Now, I know in another case where that happened, and I did this as a case to solve. I discovered that they were flying over an installation that was not previously there, and it had just sort of winked on with all of its facility lights. And so they had this big square ground presence, kind of looked like a stadium, but smaller. And so suddenly this square of light was outside their window as they were looking, and all of a sudden it appeared. And they contacted the ATC and said, hey, we just had this white thing appear off our I think it was starboard nose here, down low below us. And they didn't realize at the time that it was a ground object because it had just blinked on, and they weren't sure why. There was a clear sky. Well, they actually had just turned the lights on in the facility when they were flying over. And so they saw that, and it kind of, for a moment, it confused them. Then they were passed by it, and they never resolved it. And so I went in and looked, and I discovered, there's this facility of that size that they were kind of referring to that had just turned on its power that night. And so that's probably what they saw, was all the lights going on, which is kind of cool. But they just happened to be the unfortunate ones who ended up seeing it, and then wondering what the heck they were seeing.
Right, right. So, yeah, this particular one, who knows what it is, but I just want to say, if anyone has any questions for us, put them up in caps if you would. A lot of people are listening tonight, and I do appreciate that. But one of the reasons they're listening is they want answers. I don't think we can really, this is just speculation. But if you would have to give your best guess of what these things are, Mark, what would it be?
Well, having worked in that arena, I still work in that arena for the Navy a lot. But I will say this. I think that they're ours, definitely. Okay, I shouldn't say definitely. Yes, there's capabilities for, foreign agents doing this. But at the scale that it's apparently happening at, that would be kind of difficult. So I have a feeling we're going to get to the bottom of it. I actually thought at one point, and I mentioned this to Ben Hansen last night when we were working together, I said, I'm wondering if this is some kind of a viral marketing campaign. I mean, but look at the timing. It happened right after Thanksgiving. Okay. On Black Friday is when they first started showing up. Okay. And there was no traction after that. So it went away for a few weeks and then appeared again in December, right before Christmas. Now, that is odd, considering that they were appearing right before many of the big buying holidays. So I find that rather interesting. And the reason I found it interesting was because I thought maybe it's possible that this was a viral ad campaign for like these single-seater drones, like the Hoverfly and the Jetson 1 and other things like that, where you're the pilot and you fly these giant quadcopters the size of a small car. Okay. And they'll have lights on them. And is it one of those? Is it several of those? Maybe. But
wouldn't they be breaking a lot of laws because it was
absolutely.
incursions?
Absolutely. And viral campaigns often do that. They will break laws and then they just take the consequences, but the benefits outweigh the consequences, right? They're doing a calculation. Yeah, it was Jetson 1 flying their darn, single-seater drone. That's the coolest thing. I want one. How much are they? You two can have one for about $120,000. Wow, I could sell my Humvee. Exactly, and it flies itself. So this kind of thing. And is it really a viral market? No, I don't know that it's a viral campaign. It may not be. It's just one possibility. Okay. Now, I think that it's also possible that it, and we always go to this, right? It's a military test vehicle. I told you off the air about a military program that I was working on, and people were seeing a test of this flying vehicle that we built the engineering models of here. Okay. And this particular flying vehicle was being tested out in Idaho. And somebody saw it, thought it was UFO, started taking pictures of it. Well, as MUFON's chief photo and video analyst, guess who got the pictures?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I looked at it, I went, oh, geez, this is the program I'm working on. So now I'm stuck between a rock and a hard
I
place.
remember this. Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
I knew that I couldn't talk about the program specifically, but I also knew that these poor guys that are photographing this thing are thinking they're seeing a real UFO. And I want to tell them it's not a real UFO. And I will, but I got to get permission from the agency down in Washington. So I called those people. I called the activity down there and I said, I got pictures. We called it affectionately the birdie. We got pictures of the birdie flying around over the lake where they're testing it. And the guy said, okay. And they think it's a UFO. And he laughed. And he said, good. I said, no, it's not good. I know you think that's good cover, but they're going to go back and say, we photographed a UFO to their friends. And then that friend is going to get 10 of his friends and they're going to all do a convoy down to the military base at the other end of that lake. And they're going to end up photographing your birdie, maybe doing something you'd rather they not see. Okay, like recovery processes and stuff like that. Because this birdie would come out of a missile tube of a sub, come to the surface, open its wings, fly off the water, go do a reconnaissance mission, land on the water, close up its wings, fill up with water, and go back down and insert itself back in the missile tube and go home.
Isn't that crazy? Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Now you can look it up online, and I can tell you this. It's called Project Cormorant, like the bird, Cormorant. If you look it up, it'll say it's canceled.
Huh. It probably was. Oh, you mean you don't think it's canceled?
Okay. When it says canceled, what that logically means is the agency working on it transferred it to another agency. And therefore they canceled it. Well, we canceled the program. It's canceled. From our perspective, is the rest of the sentence you don't get to hear. But somebody else picked it up and either expanded it and moved it into something else, like perhaps the New Jersey drone situation. I don't know. Okay. Now, this one out in the lake was traveling several hundred miles an hour. It was a fast moving vehicle. Okay. But it was also rocket powered. Okay.
Wow.
And that's all in the Wikipedia. You can see that. So the bottom line is that what it was? In New Jersey? No. But is it related to the types of projects we do see in the DoD? Yes, absolutely. And what's the point of having lights? And further, what's the point of having FAA mandated lighting on it? Now, it would be great if they were all with no lights and you just saw silhouettes.
Well,
Now,
some of them are with no lights.
Some of them were, but many of them had lights on. And by looking at the lighting arrays and the way the lights are arranged, I could see that we're looking at quadcopter type designs. And because when you look at a hexacopter or an octocopter, the symmetry becomes a faceted stop sign type shape. Okay, because the base pieces of these stop sign base is never rectangular. Quadcopters, though, can be rectangular where they have a prop at one end and props at the other end. So you have 2 and 2. Okay. And the nice thing is I have a system where if one of those props gets damaged, you'd think, well, okay, now 1/4 of the lifting power is gone and the balance of beyond is going to spin itself to oblivion and destroy itself. Not so. There is software to counter that. So the loss of one propeller would allow it to be flown back because it'll spin, but the AI control is going to keep it stable enough so that everything you do on your radio control system will still logically do what it's supposed to do to the drone in the sky, and it'll safely come home. So even the available drones on Amazon can do this now. So yeah, we're looking at potential drones out there that can be quite sophisticated. And if you have several $1 million to play with, you can make them the size of a car. You can put a pilot in them, which, by the way, is probably potentially one of the reasons, 2 reasons. One of the reasons why they haven't been able to inject different frequencies at it and have it be taken down by these frequencies. They tried that. It didn't work. There's a drone gun. You can point, you pull the trigger, it interferes with all the frequencies that are trying to come to the drone to control it. And just by lowering that gun slowly, you're going to bring it down. Okay, just keep aiming at it, pull your trigger at it. And now it's just going to do this auto land thing wherever it is. Okay, that's one reason. That's one thing they tried. It did not work. And they ask why? Because it doesn't have any controlling frequencies coming to it. Why?
Yeah.
One, it's either a piloted drone, okay, with a single person flying it, or it's AI.
autonomous.
Yes,
Autonomous.
it's AI doing its own thing, and only once in a while would the home operator say or click, 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 and have it do something. You know, click, return to home, and it turns around. That signal gets to it. They try to bring it down. It doesn't work. It's not listening. It doesn't. And they said, New Jersey authorities said, the frequencies we've tried to bring it down aren't working.
Right.
Well, of course not. It's AI. It's self-mobilizing. It's not. It's making its own decision tree. It doesn't require electronic signals from outside. You're thinking too much like a classic drone. You're not thinking in terms of the future of AI. So I'm thinking that they're probably AI controlled systems, and that's actually my best guess. AI controlled drones.
I think someone put that in chat.
Well,
Someone put that in chat as a question. But
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, Mark, do you remember, I think it was 2020, that there was all kinds of drone activity, people reporting on it in Colorado?
Oh,
wow. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
I think it was 2020. And yeah,
That could have
and
been
I
Department of
started
Energy
thinking
stuff.
about that today and wondering, if there could be any type of relationship between the two.
Possibly. I mean, it could have been Department of Energy stuff going on back then. Department of Energy, not many people really realize what the Department of Energy is doing. They are responsible for a tremendous amount of secretive programs going on. And you can figure that out by just trying to make an appointment to go see anybody there.
Yeah.
Good
Here was
luck.
the comment about the artificial intelligence. Could they be rogue artificial intelligence?
Well, that's a good question.
I don't know about rogue, though. I mean, rogue would mean like self-replicated type situations or something.
No, rogue meaning like Skynet and Terminator. Okay. Yeah. I don't think so, Carmine. That's a cool question, though. I've often said Google is the next Skynet. Just look at who Google owns. They own Boston Dynamics, premier robotics makers, actually, of human type robots, and Big Dog, which carries hundreds of pounds of material, and other aerospace agencies. I mean, keep in mind, I did a project that was a classified work back when I did it years ago, and it was a satellite. And I had to build these models of a satellite. I went out to Arizona once a month for 3 days to photograph the latest production of this satellite. And I took pictures and I would bring them back. Okay, again, all under auspices of proper transport of those types of materials and everything. And I'd make a model that would be sanitized for public release. And I did that. And one of the things I noticed was that this model was covered with all kinds of technology that, wow, I couldn't believe what was on this real satellite. And they said, well, you can't show that. Let's make it this square block. You can't show that particular thing. Let's make it an elongated rectangular block. Okay, that's fine. So I made all these what are called notional representations of different features on this satellite. I produced about 24 of them, sent them to all their locations around the country and a couple across the world. And when I finally talked to the CEO of the company, he said, "Hey, you want to see who you're working for?" I said, "Sure." I expected to see admirals, and he says, "I'm gonna send you a photograph. I'll have my secretary send you a photograph." Oh, okay, thanks, man. And he sent me a photograph. And it was a photograph of Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the Google guys. It was a Google Earth satellite. And it could see license plates from space. And that's on a slant angle. It can recognize people from orbit.
And how
Okay.
long ago was this?
2008.
That's pretty scary.
So you can
Yeah.
see that, you know, technology's been here. And so the point I'm making is, you know, you talk about a rogue artificial intelligence, not necessarily rogue, but definitely artificial intelligence of a next higher order. And I think that that's what they're doing. And that's why they can't be brought down with this anti-drone technology, short of the flying nets that they shoot out to mess with the propellers. Okay. But the drones are not receiving signals to be controlled. They're actually autonomously doing it. And I think they have the ability to control in between all that. But those are the kinds of controls that come in there in momentary, bink, and they go in and the drone says, okay, I got it. And then it does the process, you know, whatever it has to do. So that's kind of interesting.
Do you think, I hope this doesn't happen, but do you think that people will start getting really uptight about this and may try to take this into their own hands and fire at them?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You know,
Which would not be a good idea, but
well, we know the military's done that. Okay. When the Chinese spy balloon happened, there was a spy balloon that was, or there was a balloon launch by a balloon club that had a little payload on it, a balloon to space. Yay. We paid $600 to buy the kit online, bought our helium, put a little toy robot on a little platform, and it was staring at our camera, and we're going to send the robot to space, 120,000 feet. Lots of people have been doing it. Okay. Well, they were the unfortunate ones who did it in the middle of the Chinese craze, and their balloon got shot down. Their little robot was obliterated. Okay. So, yes, mistakes are made and people do get trigger happy. Everything flying in the sky that was a balloon was considered a potential hazard now and a potential spy balloon. That's what's happening here. Everything that's blinking in the night sky is considered a drone now. That word is now synonymous with everything blinking in the sky. That's a mistake, because prior to this, in fact, even at the end of November, when it already happened once, everything in the sky blinking was an aircraft, just a commercial plane. Well, now everything blinking is a freaking drone, and that's just not right, you know. So obviously,
well, we know there are drone,
of course,
drones, many drones. I think in New Jersey, I'm trying to think of. Did you mention the base? I tried to get a hold of that person, Picatinny, something like that.
Picatinny Arsenal.
Yeah. But there were sometimes many per night. You know, dozens per night. And
I don't know.
They know the difference between a drone and an aircraft.
Maybe. I was surprised by how little they actually do know. They, you know, just because someone's wearing a uniform and has, you know, braid on their shoulders or on their hats doesn't mean they know everything they're looking at. I have been disappointed by those people before. Okay. And so we have to understand that, you know, military people have a primary focus. That's their technology that they were trained in. This might be something outside their bailiwick, but they're going to comment on it because they've been asked to. And I get it. So I think the problem is that if you look at, you know, the military personnel, they're trying to be helpful, but they really don't know what they're looking at yet. Not really any of us do. All we're doing is speculating, right? And that's what shows like yours are doing. They're speculating on the source. But with an educated guess based on things I've seen, based on work I've done and other people I know, it looks to me like it's a private operation, potentially a contractor. And I'm going to say another thing too about this in a minute. And they're doing this, and there are people that know what they're doing, but aren't saying anything because they can't. All right. Now let me tell you what I think what makes me think this. When there is an event scheduled, a flight plan has to be filed when an aircraft is going to go up into the air, okay, of any kind. And that flight plan might cause nearby airports to generate something called a NOTAM, a notice to airmen. And so I checked area airports around where these things were flying to see if any NOTAMs were issued. And guess what? They were.
Hmm.
That means a flight plan was filed saying these things are going to be flying around. Now, that's one possibility. The other possibility is they started flying around, people started making calls, and then the airports decided together to generate a NOTAM without understanding or having seen a flight plan. That's kind of rare, but usually a flight plan is filed. So it'll be interesting to find out if the NOTAMs are filed with a flight plan in hand. That's something very important to look at.
Now, I've heard the statements that the FBI and other agencies of intelligence have no idea what these things are, but don't worry. So what do you think of that statement?
They don't know what they are because they've been told, we know what they are, but tell your folks not to worry about it. We're handling it. We're good. So in other words, we know what it is because we're doing it, but you tell people that there's no need to worry. But we're not telling you what it is.
But that creates a vacuum and creates conspiracy, right?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And sometimes they thrive on that because if you think it's a really secretive drone from China, then you're not going to think that it's a surveillance project being done by, Department of Energy or some other thing, some other agency. Now, it is interesting that most of these events, I say most because not all, most of these events have occurred over the West Coast and the East Coast. Where's the Kansas drones? Where's the Arizona drones? Well, there are rumors of Minneapolis drones. Okay.
Yeah, I saw a sketch on the United States map, and it did seem like it was concentrated on either coast as well, out in California and up in Oregon and Washington area. So yeah, you're right. There's not a lot. I don't even recall any in the center. So I'm going to go through. We have some people posted some questions here. The hologram thing. I don't even know why that would be. I mean, that's an interesting thought, but I'm not really sure what would be the reasoning behind it. So the questions are these holograms. This would explain rapid movement in various directions. That's the question.
If you could make an image appear in midair, yes, but you have to really dig into what the term hologram means here. Okay, I used to make holograms. I taught classes on making holograms, in fact, and we use lasers with special film. And when you shine a laser at the film after it's developed, you can see a 3D image in it. When you rotate it around, you can see the 3D image moving. Okay, those were elementary holograms that we made. I taught people for years how to make holograms. But making a 3D image in midair isn't something that we have the capability of doing or may ever have the capability of doing. Like, people are seeing Star Wars and they said, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And see Princess Leia in the middle of nothing, right? Well, that's something that does not exist, all right? Where there is a hologram cube, a cube that if you look in the cube, you can see an image inside, but you're actually seeing the image on the walls of the cube, but you can't tell that's where it is. It looks like it's in the middle. Okay, it's just how it's projected. So there's that. But the term hologram is something that makes this, if we had to think about it, puts this in a category of technology 1,000 years or 150 years, if you want to go in the low end, ahead of where we are now. And that's typically not what we see. All right. So I'd say that probably not holograms in my view.
Okay. Let's see. If you point your remote at them, do they change colors? That's pretty. Can you change colors on a drone? Like
No.
seasonal? No, but I think it's pretty amazing to see these swarms that are, like in Santa and the sleigh and everything. These drone swarms, and in China, there's an amazing drone swarm that they did.
Well, these drone shows,
8,000 drones.
Yeah, when I spoke at Roswell a couple of years ago, they had a big drone show. And while Ben Hansen and I were doing his Skywatch, okay, where he does the sky watch. He talks about the, low light technology, and then I do the astronomy as the astronomer. Okay. All of a sudden, in the distance, we see all these shapes appearing in the sky, and it was the drone show going on simultaneously at a longer distance away. Okay. And yeah, I mean, you get these small drones that have bright lights on them. Well, those lights can change colors to anything. They're RGB lights, so they change color. I've used RGB lights too for many things. And the lights in my office are RGB. I can change the colors just by telling Siri to change the color of my lights. Okay. So there are ways in which you can have these different color lights, and thus the drones can also be programmed. And once you program a drone, it has its own positional awareness. It knows where it is. So you can tell a drone to go to this X, Y, and Z coordinate for a certain amount of time. The next one could go here. And you do that to all the rest. And from a certain vantage point, which is what these shows are built to show, from a certain vantage point, you'll see shapes. And I thought I saw this one football game where they had this amazing drone show with this beautiful music, and you saw the American flag and the eagle, and it was the coolest thing. Very, very heartwarming. So this is something that we would have to consider. Are these drone swarms? Well, if they are, they're not working together. Okay, they're separate and doing their own apparent thing.
Right.
And that's what makes them so mysterious.
Right. This is a good point here. What is so hard about telling the public what these things are?
Yeah, Joe is right. And what is so hard about telling the public? Why can't they just level? I think there's two things. First of all, there are a great number of people that don't know what's going on, namely New Jersey officials and things like that. People that don't have the clearance to know, probably. That's my guess. And second, it's probably a classified project of some kind. And so you say, but wait, that doesn't make any sense. A classified project in plain sight? What's going on with that? Why do they even have lights, at times? Well, the answer lies in the nature of the project. We don't know. They've done this kind of thing before, and they use the plain hiding in plain sight thing. But you see this thing, it's really doing something else. People seeing it is part of the process of refining the vehicle.
Right.
For,
people have said that
see
about,
it.
the big black triangles that people have saw, like it's probably some type of military secret project, and that it's been shown to the public to see what type of reaction there is. That's a theory. Anyway, I'm not sure what I think about it. Are commercial pilots and ATC competent people?
In their work, yes, absolutely. But I'll tell you one thing: commercial pilots are not astronomers, and I know commercial pilots that thought Jupiter was a pacing UFO or a pacing craft, because they're flying in that same direction. All right, and so if they were astronomers, they would say, "Oh, well, that's Venus or that's Jupiter." So we don't have to worry about that. And they're not going to pull out a product on their phones while they're flying. However, I have known and seen footage taken by some just recently that they're filming something out of the window that looks odd to them. So that might have been a drone. Okay, and so there was a jet over New Jersey. I got the pilot's video, and yeah, there's something odd out there. Okay, it was down below. Now, these drones seem to concentrate below 1,000 feet.
Right.
Not sure why, but
yeah,
they do.
Yeah. Is it just private citizens doing this, like a group, or a protest? Now, a protest, I'd never even thought of something like that.
If so, it's a multi-million-dollar protest, and it better have a good resolution, because they're spending a lot of money.
That's true.
It's not a group of kind of willy-nilly private citizens. It's I heard from a DoD contractor just today that on Saturday that it was actually a private entity that is doing it, from their understanding. So they're more in the know even than I am, because I have not worked on this project at all. And so I don't know. But again, as someone that, I was on the cover of a drone magazine because of my pioneering in drones here in Connecticut. And so I've been in this industry for quite a long time. I've watched it evolve. I've taken advantage of some of the evolution. I actually had the first drone in Connecticut. I was like the first drone in Connecticut. It's hanging in my workshop over there. Okay, it was a aluminum welded frame system, and I had a Lawrence Livermore scientist here for 13 days, and we worked out bugs and tried to fly it. But the only distance we got to was it turned into a flying buzzsaw on my front lawn. Okay, and we ran for our lives in one case, but it was hard to fly, but we managed to get to fly. Okay, because we were actually monkeying with what are called PID loops, trying to get it to work stably and not overcompensate. Because once something starts to rock like this, it tends to compound, then it does this, and then it goes all over the place. So
it took them.
We had to dampen out that motion, work on dampening out that motion. But still, that doesn't mean all that much other than I've just been in the drone world since the very beginning. And I went through, actually for National Geographic, they asked me to make a drone hoax and then expose it.
I remember that.
Remember that?
Yes.
We flew in
With
February.
the lights.
Yeah, I made a big sphere of blue lights.
And that still shows up as a real UFO on certain, I've seen that show up a few times.
It shouldn't, because we flew it over a busy shopping mall. Yeah. All right. And everybody's looking up at this thing saying, "Oh, look at that. Holy cow. What is that thing?" And it was snowing. So while it was snowing, you had this blue halo around this thing flying, and it had these lights that were going like this, like chaser lights on the four arms of the quadcopter. And then you had this ring of blue lights, and it was making this blue halo that would overall flash white and pulse. Oh, it was beautiful. And the snow just added to the effect. It looked like it was much bigger than it was. So we took off behind the mall, went way up into the sky. And I did not want to create a hoax at all unless I could expose it and show how it was done. And National Geographic agreed to that. And that's what the show is about, how technology could fool you, how off-the-shelf technology could fool you. So we flew it over the parking lot. People saw it. Wow, cars stopped from everywhere. And then I dropped it down right in the middle of the parking lot in front of all of them. And they were like, "Whoa, what's that? Holy cow.
Take me to your leader."
Yeah. And then the show, so they interviewed a lot of people. I thought it was like aliens. And one guy said, "That's ET." It was funny as heck. But the point of that was then I came out and I said, this experiment shows how ordinary technology, if not understood, can become magic to some people. It can actually look like something alien and foreign. And that's what we were doing, was trying to demonstrate how ordinary technology now available can cause a tremendous stir. And so the show was deemed a success because of that. And that was really cool.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another question from Tony. Could these drones be a diversion from the real thing? I think they could be a diversion from something.
Tony, that's a good point. I mean, there's a possibility that this is a diversion from something else, but it's a really expensive diversion. Okay, so this something else better be something good. Okay, honestly, because this is right now, to develop the technology that we're looking at, you need in excess of probably $10 to $50 million to get to the point that these things are.
That's what I'm thinking.
Size of a small car, long duration of several hours in the sky. That implies that it's more than batteries flying this thing. Maybe we're talking liquid hydrogen fuel cell or some type of fuel cell operating this thing, which means new technology, new infrastructure designed to build the drones to use this technology, all kinds of stuff. And if it's that, then I could see what's happening. I can understand that. But again, it would be an expensive diversion, Tony. Really
now, what
expensive.
about if they were, now I've heard this and I'm going to throw it at you because I don't know if it makes any sense or not, but some people saying, well, you can't just shoot these things down anywhere because they could have their powering system could contaminate, a situation, be dangerous.
Yeah. I've said this earlier tonight with you. I think that the reason they're flying over populated areas, heavily populated areas, is so they won't get shot down. Because I think they otherwise would have already done it. Okay, well, maybe not. I mean, it might be like a Chinese balloon situation where they let it go all the way across the country before shooting it down. And no one was really happy about that. But with this particular situation, okay, these drones are flying less than 1,000 feet in the air. So they certainly have been out over the water, right? They've certainly been over fields. There's no reason they couldn't have picked and chosen a time that would have been efficient to take it out and take it down. But the question is, what would you take it down with? I've got a few ideas.
Let's hear it.
I actually thought, okay, several things. First thing I thought of was using a kamikaze drone to ram it. Okay, take out one of its propellers, because some of these are going to be these giant quadcopters. I've seen that shape in some of these. And so you take out one of those propellers, it's coming down. It may spiral, and it may have AI to help it land safely, but it's still going to come down. Okay. And if you did over a field, it's coming down in a field. And now you've got the answer to what this has been. Second, we were out in the field yesterday when Ben was doing his thing, and I was helping with him. A very, very bright light on the drone. So bright that it looked like Travis Walton's famous episode where the light's coming down from the sky. And it literally had this very sharp, bright light all around you. Well, in other words, you could see from a very long distance with this light, right? Very, very powerful light. So mount it forward, okay, and then go up into the sky to one of these drones and just video capture what it looks like, because it's always flying at night. Turn this light on and capture it right around you, and chase it and capture it, so you get a little idea of what the structure looks like. That's one. That's the second one. So there's a number of things to do to capture it and get these things to come down, and see what they are. And I think that's not a bad idea. So we can actually see what it looks like.
It's possible you may not get an answer if you actually capture one either. Because what if you have, you could have a hobbyist that is just getting involved too, and then you have a regular, drone. But I've also heard that, people that have thought about taking them down, that it's not an easy thing. Now, you talked earlier about this little net, and that's something that is shot at it, and a net, like, supposedly will go around it and drop it.
Well,
but I mean, how accurate can those be? Right.
Well, remember, the drone to fly has got a downdraft. It's pushing down. There's a down thrust. So if you get above it and shoot the net down at it, then the propeller is going to suck that thing down into the downdraft of at least one of the propellers. And so it'll end up tangling up the propeller. And, the net's made of these real fine mesh, tiny braided, tiny steel cables. Okay. And it'll just go, and it will stop one of those motors from working. And then things go, and it's going to come down. Or the AI will try to control it to a gentle landing. But either way, it's going to bring it down. Or it's going to try and beat a hasty retreat to a safe landing spot, but it's going to be crippled and will eventually come down, can be followed, and then captured.
Now, another thing, I've wondered about this, and I haven't heard any reports of it, but I'm wondering if there's ever been a situation since this flap has started where there's been any, near hit misses from like a commercial airplane.
At least one.
At least one.
At least one. A Cessna flying at it was flying through 1,000 to go up to like 3,000 or whatever. They had to divert rapidly because one of these things was in front of them. Okay, just the one case I heard. The other thing, by the way, the other way we can catch these, and Ben and I were talking about this today, set up one of those million candle power lights, the very, very powerful lights in a tight beam. And when you see one, aim it at it, and then with a telephoto lens on another camera, take pictures of the structure. And that's a very valid way to do it, because if it's under 1,000 feet, these lights go several thousand feet, okay, and can illuminate things. They're so bright. And it'd be interesting to see if the craft had any kind of avoidance mechanism to bright lights, because some of them may have that. They may have this. If you got a bright light hitting it, the photo sensor registers light and says, "Oh, evade." And it'd be kind of cool to see that happen. If it tries to evade like a bat tries to evade. But they're also massive. So their moment of inertia, that is their resistance to movement, is very, very high. So they're not going to go boom and just like move very fast. They're going to go whoa, and they're going to try and move because they have all that mass to push out of the way. So that resistance to movement is much higher. So that moment of inertia, as it's called, is going to be higher. And they're going to end up moving slowly. So if you did shine a light on it and get that photo, it'll be in the process of moving, but you'll have caught several photos, maybe 2 or 3 in a burst, and be able to study those and see what the structure is you're looking at. And that's ground-based.
Mm-hmm. Are you afraid that people will shoot or shine a high power laser at planes and helicopters? That would be, people have been doing that anyway, which is terrible. They've caused a lot of problems.
Yeah, because people are showing video of obvious planes and calling them drones. Yeah, that is happening, is going to continue to happen probably long after the drone flap is over. It's going to continue to happen. People have been shooting green lasers at planes anyway, as Martin just said. Yeah. So I am afraid of that, yes. And I think that that's something that we have to deal with. But you can understand why people are shining these lasers at them. I have several high-powered lasers. I don't ever point them into the sky unless I know there's no aircraft anywhere within sight. I don't take the chance.
Right. Now, I don't know. I can't verify what this person's saying, but they're saying that Elon Musk warned of drone swarm battles on Twitter back in September, on Twitter, September 29. And he's connected and wealthy. Seems odd that he mentioned this 4 months ago. I'm not familiar with that, whether that's can be verified or not, but that is interesting if it is.
Neither am I, but let's consider, first of all, these aren't drone swarms. A drone swarm will be hundreds of drones. Mm-hmm. Okay, by definition, it's not going to be 10. It's going to be hundreds of drones, and typically they're going to be small. One of the things that I was working on was an idea to have basically a handful of mini drones you could just throw in the air. They would activate, and they would go study a street and map it all out and send that information back to you before they died. Okay, and then you have a full map of the street. And so they actually ended up implementing some of that technology to do that. And so there are drone swarms that can do mapping very quickly with batteries that don't even last more than a minute. But you don't need more time than that. They're fast moving. They're doing this and sending the telemetry back to a main station that builds the image of the street, all the little nooks and crannies, keeping soldiers safe when they're walking into battle. Things like that are available now technologically. Whether it's been fully implemented or not, I don't know. But I know that we have done testing with, not we, me, but we, the military, has done testing with this particular technology. And, it was something that I talked about, way back in the first time we had drones, way back early, about National Geographic time is when I mentioned that as drone swarms are a strong possibility. And it only makes sense. I mean, they'd come up with it eventually, right?
Yeah. I just got a text from Donna, who that says Elon Musk calls F-35 builders idiots and favors drone swarms. That's what she just found out about him making comments on that.
he may have said that.
Well, it's actually, I just saw the article, but again, you can't trust anything you read either.
Let me explain something. I built some parts for the F-35 here, my rapid prototyper. I was building engine blade locks. They're actually the blades of the engines, the turbine fan blades. They lock into the hub, and there's a lock piece that goes in there. At the time, I had the only rapid prototyper in Connecticut that could do the job. And this company was using me to build these on little sprues 4 at a time. And they would turn around and make them out of titanium because they can make a mold of them and then fill the mold with titanium, molten titanium, which would melt out the thing I made and get a perfect replica. And then they machine it to the fine tolerances and install it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of that for F-35 program. And I found out later that those little blade locks that I was selling them for a few $100 a sprue, okay, were actually tens of thousands of dollars a piece. So
doesn't surprise me.
Doge, okay, the Department of Government Expense or whatever that is, okay, is probably going to root out that problem and try to make it more equitable. And that's good because our taxes are being sent into endless pots for defense spending when we actually can get away with spending a lot less to actually get more bang for our buck. And that's probably what he's talking about there.
Yeah.
The overcharging in defense industry is
incredible,
outrageous.
I mean, we spend on our military like more than I forget how many countries combined. It's crazy.
No.
So one other question here. Is it possible that an organized group is controlling these drones? That's kind of what we're talking about. But I mean, how could they end up in Brisbane, Australia, and Germany over a military base there, and in the UK? And
keep in mind that we have to see the video, right? We have to know that they weren't just planes mistaken for these things, as has happened in literally 8 out of 10 cases here. Okay, so that's 8 out of 10 cases. 8 of them are planes mistaken for drones, and there are 2 drones. I mean, we really have a drone problem. There are drones up there, but the predominant number of pictures and images that I've seen are of ordinary aircraft that are being called drones. It's inevitable. It happens every time something like this happens. Every single flashing light becomes a drone, but it doesn't mean that everything's of an airplane at all. There are drones out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're about ready to wrap up. There is, I'm going to see if I can get a video up here that someone sent me recently that I thought was very interesting. No, it has to be converted before I can actually pop it up, unfortunately. So this has been fun hanging out with you. We've almost gone 2 hours. So let's talk about where someone can find you in your Sky Tour live stream and what you do there.
Oh yeah, sure. As an astronomer, I do public outreach, and one of the things we do is we have skytourlive.com and skytourlive.org. We are a nonprofit organization, and what we do is we have observatories around the country. We have 2 in Arizona. We have 1 we're putting in here in Connecticut. The 2 in Arizona are deep sky observatories that look at the night sky and will actually show people the night sky in ways they've just never seen the night sky before. And we make those pictures we take available to them within 30 seconds of taking the pictures. And then you can find us at skytourlive.org. We have a donate button if people want to help support us, because there's literally no one else doing this out there. Not like I do it, not like we do it. My co-host Daryl and I, we take people through the night sky nightly on these clear nights and show things in a way that they just can't believe. The beauty is unmistakable. Yes. Of the night sky hiding over your head. Right. So you can find us there at skytourlive.org.
And I've joined in a number of times, and
it's
really, really something. That's a really great service that you do.
Well, thank you. It was very cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes. So I want to thank everyone that's been involved, all the people that came on the show, between Nick and Lou for letting me use his clip, and also for Trisha. I want to thank, again, you and the listener. There's so many people here that have been watching tonight, and thank you for your questions and everything. And don't forget, the show's coming up. Coming up on Tuesday is live here in studio is Ryan Graves, the aviator. I met him down in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be discussing drones with him as well. And then, so that's here Tuesday.
That's a surprise.
Yeah. And then the following week, I have another aviator, a commercial airline pilot that's looking into the UFO topic. His name is Todd Curtis. So check that out. We have shows every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you again, Mark, very much.
It was a great being here, and thanks to your amazing viewers.
Yeah, thank you now. Good night, everyone.